Welcome to the Movement Minutes with your host, Reed Nellis. Here, we pursue the human connection. We learn how to empower one another. We discuss clinical pearls. We discover our passions. We reflect on our capacity to achieve. We remain open to novel trends and concepts, because regardless of our backgrounds or experiences, our successes or failures, we all speak the same language, human movement. All right, everybody, we're back. I was out for 2 weeks from podcasting or doing anything, essentially, because I had a head cold and it was miserable, which you'll hear a little bit of sneezing, wheezing in this recording with Eric Chiles. Eric Chiles is a PGA teaching professional at Chaska Town Course here in Minnesota. He has trained under Hank Haney. If you haven't heard of Hank Haney, do a quick Google search. Hank worked with Tiger Woods famously on his swing for a number of years. So Eric is one of the leading people in Minnesota, if not the nation, on training swing habits. Eric has even taken this so far as developing his own training aid called a Chili Whacker, which is a super cool name because it's straight up his name and don't whack the noodles, which we'll talk about in the episode, but it trains swing path for golfers. He mentions that 90% of not scratch golfers, aka your weekend warriors like me, create a slice with their swing. This item, this tool, this training aid helps address that and gets people like you and I swinging better and enjoying the game more. In today's episode, we also talk about using external cues versus internal cues on how to change somebody's swing and other things like hot yoga and mobility training as it relates to golf as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode talking about all things golf, me shamelessly just trying to pick Eric's brain on trying to become a better golfer myself and having a couple laughs and giggles along the way. So join me in welcoming Eric Chiles. All right, everybody. So we've got Eric Chiles here. He's the PGA teaching professional at Chaska Town Course here in Minnesota. He's learned under the tutelage of a genius, Hank Haney, and I'm excited to have him on the podcast. So we just heard kind of the formal intro. I just gave another little synopsis there. But Eric, tell us what we need to know. Who is Eric Chiles?
Wow. Well, I'm a Minnesota guy originally, and let's see, I'm a Ferris State grad. So I don't know if anybody knows, there used to be 4 PGM programs. So it's professional golf management. So I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself in high school, like most people. I did junior college and had some success playing. And I thought, oh man, I'd really love to play golf in college. And I really wasn't good enough. So I ended up going to Ferris State to work in professional golf management. And they turn out PGA head golf pros. So I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to go out and be a head golf pro someday at Hazeltine or something like that. And I took an internship in Miami Beach. And that's kind of where I got like the taste of golf and working in golf. I've been a PGA member for 21 years now. I've been playing since I was, 3 or 4, and I'm 49 now. So I've always played golf. But what else? I mean, married, live out in Victoria. I don't have any kids, don't have any pets. I'm a golfer, man. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, who has time for kids and pets when you got golf to do? Right? So I've got to ask though, you famously, and it's been reposted on a myriad of different Instagram accounts, you famously hit between the doors of a minivan. If you don't have kids or pets, why does your wife have a minivan that you're hitting drivers, or what was it, a 4-iron through or something?
Yeah, it was a 6-iron, and
6-iron through the minivan doors.
I feel bad giving this up, but that van, as a golf pro in Minnesota, back say 5-6 years ago, before the TrackMans and all the ball capture methods got good, I wouldn't teach golf in the winter. So I would work with my buddy, and we did drywall taping for about 14, 15 years. So that was actually my drywall van. Okay. And and it was not nearly as nice as it looked. I had actually cleaned it up to look a little better. And then this sounds awful, man, but it was my van. It was not my wife's van.
Oh, so you did it for the gram, as the kids say these days.
I kind of did, and had I hit it, it wouldn't have really been that big a deal. So there wasn't as much pressure as I think it was perceived. And again, it really wasn't that hard. I mean, I hit probably 50 balls through it, but but yeah, it was there was a little stagery to that
Well, it looked good. I mean, it got posted on
one.
cool accounts and stuff, right? It's all that matters.
Yeah, it got a heck 3-4 million views. It was
That's
weird.
insane. That's insane.
Yeah,
So you kind of mentioned your track history with golf and playing since you were 3, and now into your 40s, you're still playing, you're competing still. We'll touch on that soon. But
sure.
how were you introduced to the game? Like, what was kind of the aha moment? Because all golfers have I mean, whether you're trying to break 120 or you're trying to get into the 70s, we all have like kind of a aha moment. What was yours?
Sure. Now, do you mean that as a player or as a teacher?
Yes, both. Sure. You tell me.
All right. Well, I would say as a player, when I was a junior in high school, I played really well in our qualifier to go to the state tournament. And back then, I didn't hit it very good. I bet I probably hit 5 greens, at the most, and chipped in once and made a bunch of 20, 30 footers and ended up making it to the state tournament as a junior. And as I look back, I probably had no business making it. I just had just the most career day ever, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. And I'm 5'5", and I think in high school I probably weighed about a buck 20 soaking wet. And I also found that was the only game where I could beat up on guys that were like 6'2" and
Yeah.
just chip and putt better. So as a player, it was really in high school having some success playing and was like, wow, this is really fun. And, I like this and I want to work towards being better. As far as a teacher goes, back to Ferris State. So I went to this golf program and you did 6 months on campus and it was in Michigan. And there wasn't a lot to do there, especially in the winter. So you would do an internship, and I took one in Miami, Miami Beach at Lagorce. And while I was
Not a
working there,
terrible
I worked
place
for
to
an
be held.
no, it was a pretty cool place when you're
Yeah.
20, 21 years old. And so I worked for an ex tour player. His name was Artie McNichol, and Artie was hilarious, and he played on tour for 11 years. And so I said, hey, here's what I want from my internship, because he said, what do you want out of this? And I was like, hey man, I'll work 78 hours a week, but will you just help me with my game, because I'm going to play on TV? And
Yeah.
he was like, you think so? And I was like, yep, I know so, because I will do the work. You just tell me what I got to do. So he was really good to me, and spent enough time to help me and get me better. I ended up watching some tour players live, go to Doral to go watch that. And that's kind of where I was like, I really like kind of working in golf. And then as I worked at Lagorce, I worked at Hazeltine, I worked at Minnetonka, and then I got a job at my last internship was at Brookview. If anybody knows Brookview, so they let me teach, and I just absolutely loved it,
Yeah.
because my time in the private clubs was folding shirts, and
Yeah.
it was one member, three guests, and then you sell three hats, three shirts, box them up, and that's okay, but that really wasn't my idea of being a golf pro. So teaching really, when I got to Brookview, I was like, man, this is the greatest. I'd do my 40 hours a week in the shop, and I couldn't wait to go teach for another 30 to 40 a week. So I think that's probably where it started.
That goes for a lot of individuals, regardless of the industry that they're in, is um, you know, most of us are masters by teaching, right? And whether you're in sales or whether you're in golf or whether you're in chiropractic and wellness like I am, a big part of what I do with patients and clients is teach, right? And sure, we can be a
Sure.
catalyst and use different devices like the chili whacker, which we'll get to, really guide people to better movement and better strategies. But it all comes with an education background, and I think finding that passion is awesome. So cool. You also, and I mentioned this right away, studied under Haney. What was that like, and when was that? Was that right away in your
Uh,
career, or was that
no, that was later in 2000. So I became a Class A member it had to be about 99. And then I got a really good job at the Wilds.
okay?
If anybody knows the Wilds, so that was like my first big break. Was to get the director of instruction there. I was about 30, and it's a funny story. If anybody's young and listening, I had this. I was teaching. It was my second year there, and I was getting established. Your first couple of years, it's tough. and ESPN Golf Schools were doing a school. And so this guy walks up to me and he's like, "Hey man, one of my teachers is stuck in Denver and he can't make it. So I just need a body. I don't need you to say a thing. I just need you to come down there because I've got 18 players and I need 2 instructors."
You're like, I'll
And I
be your
kind of was like,
Huckleberry.
yeah, well, I was just like, geez, that's, like, am I allowed to talk?
Yeah.
So he said, "Hey man, just cancel all your lessons. I'll pay you and come down and just stand there, and I was like, So normally this is something that I would have just been like, yeah, no, no thanks. But something in my shoulder, or, in my gut
Yeah.
was like, maybe drop your pride for a second. So I called some people, canceled some lessons, went down, and I watched this guy. His name was Eddie Bow. He had 18 people, he had 15 beginners. And within 15 minutes, he had all 18 players hitting a baby draw with a 7-iron. And that smacked me right in the face because I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I could do that with one, but this guy just did it with 18 people. And I just was like, wow. So what I found real quick is I was young, I was 30, I thought I was good, I thought I knew everything, and I realized I didn't know
Yep.
anything that I thought I knew.
Little bowl of
So
humble soup there, huh?
yeah, it was a really good thing. And then we got done, and this was cool because a couple hours into it, I didn't really know this guy, but at lunch he just said, "Hey, I got to ask you something." He's like, "You really like it when the people hit good shots and they get better?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, don't
Yeah.
we all?" And he goes, "Nah, not everybody does." He's like, "But you're the kind of guy that we like. So if you're interested, I'll fly you down to Hank's place and we'll spend a week and we'll get you caught up and you can teach with us." And I was like, "Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in. Sign me up." So yeah, so it went from like kind of a weird, not good vibe to within 5, 6 hours later, he's like, "Hey, you want to teach with us?" And 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane down to Dallas Fort Worth and meeting Hank and meeting the other teachers. I think there was 31, 32 of them that worked for ESPN, and all of them were just fantastic. And again, knew so much more than I did. And then another funny story is we had to take a 60-point test when you're a newbie, and you don't know this, but you got like 2 or 3 newbies, and then the other guys are kind of watching, and you take the test. And of the 60 questions, I think I got 9 right, and and it's by design.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just to humble you. And then the next year, when you're one of the guys, you know what's coming and you know how
Yeah.
it works. But working, for Hank, he was the lead. We learned his method, and you were really taught to teach his way. If you wanted to get creative, you were fired,
Yeah.
and which is fine because learning his stuff made me a lot better teacher. So I mean, I owe a lot to him. But really, Eddie turned out to be Hank's brother-in-law,
Okay.
and Eddie, I think, is actually as good or better of a teacher with zero ego. You've probably never even heard of him, and he's just a great guy.
I actually have. That's it's interesting that you brought his I didn't even know he fit into this story at all, so it's interesting you brought his name up. So for those
Yeah,
who don't know, by the way, Hank Haney is a infamous teacher and instructor in the golf world, famously taught and worked with Tiger Woods for a number of years until they kind of had a little falling out. But yeah, he's a legend, we could say, with quotes around that in the golf world. So awesome to be able to take that chance, listen to that little whatever it was talking, if it was an angel
yeah,
or devil on your shoulder, we don't know, but something on your shoulder talking to you and take that chance. Cause yeah, that's what an opportunity to take. And I think it's cool that, being comfortable being the idiot in the room. Like you said, you mentioned this on multiple occasions and I did too, being humble and being forced to be humbled by this experience. So often people get in like this ego that they're the smartest person on their course. Like you mentioned teaching at Brookview. Well, you could be the best teacher at Brookview, but I bet you 99% of the people listening to this right now don't even know where Brookview is, or the Wilds,
sure,
or potentially Chaskatown Course or Hazeltine. Like who knows?
sure,
Even though the Ryder Cup was held there and is going to be back there again, like you could be the best person at your course, but once you get the opportunity to expand that to the nation, the world, and you get that humility and genuineness injected into you, that's when you're like, okay, I've got to be comfortable being the idiot in the room and being okay asking questions and learning, right? That's where growth happens. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are always the people I gravitate to, are the people that don't seem like the know-it-alls,
yeah,
because the know-it-alls, I mean, I've learned a lot from know-it-alls, but I've met a lot of other people that just kind of sat there and didn't say much. And if you ask them some questions, turns out some of those people that don't talk much, they know a lot, maybe even more.
yep. Well, like you
So,
just
so
mentioned
yeah, I
Eddie
buy
Bo,
that.
like Eddie Bo, you said he's a great instructor in his own right and just doesn't carry the
Oh yeah,
ego alongside it.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Like world class, top 100. That guy should be a household name.
yeah,
And but that isn't that important to him.
right. Which I think speaks volumes in its own right. So we'd mentioned this already. You currently work at Chaska Town Course, teaching professional there.
Hmm.
That is what in Minnesota, at least, we qualify that as the little sister of Hazeltine National, which I just mentioned held the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
Players played a little bit over at Chaska Town Course during that Ryder Cup stint there. What was it like
Hmm.
being on site? And were you on site at Hazeltine at all for the Ryder Cup, or what was that experience like?
Uh, yeah. The through our section, you can sign up to work on the range and help. And I think the coolest thing was I got to drive around the players after they won, getting them from wherever they were back to the clubhouse. So like Mickelson and Patrick Reed.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, during the Ryder Cup, it was an amazing week. I mean, that's the whole golf world descends upon Chaska. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on, and it was really the best part of it. It wasn't so much the tour players because they're all kind of hanging at Hazeltine and doing their thing. Some would come over and do a clinic once in a while, but just all the European people that are on
yeah.
vacation that were just a riot to hang out with and meet, and just some of the stories. I mean, some I can't even tell. I mean, these guys are
Right.
hilarious, but
See,
but it was neat. It was a great week.
but that's the fun part about golf is like on the course, it's a competition. And as
Sure.
we all know, whether you're a weekend warrior trying to break 100 with your buddies and just slamming 17 beers on every hole too, like it's a competition. But after golf, some of the stories that you hear and just the environment around that, and being able to work in
Yeah.
that industry is awesome, right? So yeah, my cousin. So I was actually living in Colorado when the Ryder Cup was here, so I wasn't even in state. My cousin's like, "Hey, you still have that?" I had a basically a tux or a suit that was like an American. It was like stars and stripes jacket and like red pants
Nice.
and all that stuff.
Right.
He goes, "Do you think I'd fit in that?" I'm like, "I don't know. If you rip the seams, I don't really care." So he borrowed it. I shipped it up to him, and I guess he was on like the 13th at Hazeltine and yelled at Phil Mickelson, and Mickelson kind of looks over him and he goes, "That's an awesome suit," and points him out. And he's like starstruck, and he's like, "I started sweating," and yeah, it's super funny. But those players, they're human too, right? And I think that's the coolest thing about I've worked thankfully with but Champions Tour players, NHL, NFL, MLB players, and like they're just human.
Yeah.
They're just regular people, and
Yeah.
I
Just
mean,
gifted at what they do, and they
yeah,
worked really hard, all of
yeah,
them, to get there. But yeah, there's normal people,
yeah.
you know.
It's awesome, awesome. So I mentioned this earlier as well, but you still compete. Last year, it sounds like I did a little creeping on your PGA stats, and it sounds like you did pretty darn
Yeah.
good last year. What's the struggle in your head when you're like, okay, I teach this on the range to my during your lessons into your golfers that you work with? Does that ever creep into your head, like in a mid round when you're competing? Of like, gosh, I know I'm supposed to get here on plane, or P3 is supposed to be here, and you can't fix it, or how does that work for you?
There's a fine line between teaching and watching golf swings, and then and doing your own and staying out of your way and not thinking too hard. And at 49, I'm pretty good at. I go to my job, and either I practice in the morning before I start, or I practice after. But I try and separate the two. When I'm playing, I don't have swing thoughts. I don't. I'm always visualizing what I want the ball to do, and on the good days, it's doing exactly what I'm visualizing. And on the bad days, it's doing maybe the opposite. I'm looking for a
Yeah,
draw and it's a cut, and then I know I got to probably spend a little more time practicing. But I mean, that's not that hard for me. I think the hardest part is to give 40, 50 hours of your time for lessons and not put that time towards working on your game,
Yeah.
that can get me a little frustrated because I just don't have the time to put into my own game. And then when I'm playing bad, that kind of, yeah, I'm not. You could ask my wife. I'm not probably the most fun guy to be around after I just went out and shot a 75 at a pro-am and took a day off work. And
Yeah.
you're not making any money when you go shoot 75s.
So you're not the teaching professional that, like, I took a lesson one time when I was down in Colorado, and the guy's like, yeah, so let me see you, swing, 5 7-irons, and I was like, okay, this is what I feel, this is what I've got, this is how I think the shot shape looks, and blah blah blah. And he's like, all right, so let me see that, and he goes off and rips like 50 shots, and those 5 shots were the only shots I hit that entire lesson.
What?
And the rest
Ooh,
of the time he's just
yeah.
telling me, and I'm like, it looks like you just want to practice your game with my clubs, like. So that's not what you do.
No, it's funny. The only time I hit shots, and I always ask the student if I can, I grab their golf club and I don't let them know this. So I'm actually a left-handed golfer.
Okay.
So I just say, hey, are you okay if I hit 4 shots just to, explain what I'm looking for, like how the club works, a Ferris wheel, a tilt-a-whirl, a merry-go-round. And I hit 2 bad shots, then I hit 1 really good one. And then I go, how did that swing look? And they're like, oh, pretty good. And then I flip it upside down and I go left-handed and hit it pretty much. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't say perfect, but I hit it pretty good.
As good as you
And they
can with
look
a
at me,
right-handed club. Yeah.
yeah, upside down, and they'll go, "Whoa," and I'm like, well, I'm not right-handed, so you can do this, like, and then I give
Yeah.
them their club back, and then I'm done hitting. And it ain't about me. It's all about them and getting them better. So yeah, when I hear about somebody saying, I'm gonna hit shots and do it like me, I think that's quite possibly the worst way to teach someone, unless it's kids. Sometimes kids can watch and copy. So young kids, I'll hit some shots if they want me to. But it ain't about me when I'm teaching golf.
Right. But that little, like, aha, like, oh, look at this cool trick creates a little buy-in, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's just it really drives home the whole concept of swing playing. I'm like, here's how it works, and and honestly, I've probably hit 1,000 shots right-handed, and if I can hit
yeah.
a nice little 140-yard 7-iron with a baby draw with their golf club, I
Yeah.
mean, clearly it's not that hard if
Right.
you know the physics.
Well, it's not that hard after 1,000 shots. I grabbed my little swing trainer stick the other day, and I was trying to hit left-handed shots, and I just looked like a baby giraffe trying to swing a club. It's not good. It's not good. But so you just kind of mentioned, like, the worst advice you could give a golfer. What is in your head, the worst advice, like, or worst one-liner that you could possibly give a golfer?
Well, I mean, keep your head down. That's a
Okay.
that's a that's a bad one. That's not. It's well-meaning advice, and I know if there's guys on here, they're like, "What do you mean?" I tell my wife that all the time.
Yeah.
But your head is attached to your spine, and moving up and down with your spine is what makes your head go up or down. And so I think when people say keep your head down, what they really mean is stay in posture, stay tilted.
Yeah.
And again, it's well meaning, but it's not really. If you watch tour pros, their heads are moving, and some of them are even looking down the line as after before they hit the ball. So the whole keep your head down thing, keep your left arm straight. um, some of these things that you heard 20, 30 years ago are complete myths.
Yeah. And I think something you've touched on vaguely, but overarching, is everybody's swing is their own, right? Like, we all have
Yeah.
our own structural limitations and movement limitations and strengths and weaknesses, and being able to
hmm
play to those. How does that translate into your teaching methodology? I mean, are you a big swing your swing kind of guy? Or are you, like you already mentioned, you don't want people to match your swing, but do you have
Yeah.
like an ideal swing in mind?
Yeah, and I don't know if it sounds like a cop out or not, but I tell everyone, or I let them know. I don't tell anybody
Yeah.
anything, but I'll
You
just say, hey,
inform them.
yeah, are you aware that golf ball only reacts to 4 things? And people are like, and sometimes I'll ask, what do you think? And they're like, well, my left arm and my knee, or my weight shift, and I was like, the ball only reacts to the face. So the face starts it, the path curves it. Then the ball says, did you hit me on the sweet spot? And then it says, did you hit down or up on me? That's attack angle. So your body, the ball doesn't really care about you. it
Yeah.
cares about what that club head is doing in space and how you deliver it. So if anybody can come into me and control their face and path, the funniest thing ever, 2 weeks ago, I had a kid come in with a cross-handed grip. So he gripped it inverted, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'd known him. I played a round of golf with him this summer when he shot 69. So it's like, do you change that grip? And I was just fascinated. I'm like, I love it. You hold it what I would 20 years ago say completely wrong, but yet you
Yeah.
cure it and hit these high draws. But he had really good control of the face and path. And so if someone comes to me, every golf swing, every person is a Rubik's cube. I don't have an agenda. I just want them to have good face and path control and teach them how to, because then they're in control of their ball flight.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that, especially your weekend warrior golfer misses out on is control. And like, if you hit a giant slice, like I'm not even talking like a decent fade, I'm talking like a full on banana slice.
The
But
power fade.
yeah, the power fade. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
But you know exactly where it's going to go. And I mean, if you're that terrible of a golfer, sorry if that's you listening and you're that golfer that you're terrible, but if that's how you play, most likely you're playing muni courses. You're not playing tree lined courses. Like you can play that power fade off every drive as long as it's consistent. You know, it's exactly where you want to go.
Right. Right.
And I think owning that consistency is key. And obviously, we
Mhm.
would like to address that with the club face, swing path, impact, all that attacking, all that stuff. But
Yep.
that's interesting. So that kind of bleeds me into in season versus out of season training. Now you don't do drywall stuff anymore, which I'm bummed about because I've got a nice project at the house I could get you over to work on. Now you're teaching in the winter with the likes of
Mhm.
TrackMan and stuff like that. How does
Yeah.
your mentality of lessons change and what you want an individual to work on in season versus out of season differ?
Sure. I guess I would say when it comes to the competitive players, whether it's high school, college, pros, guys that are playing, for a living, I do teaching and swing changes in the winter for people. And then once we go outside, then I kind of switched over to more coaching with those competitive players. So it's like, if we want to make a change, a guy says, "Hey, I'm cutting everything and I want to play a little tight draw." Well, we fix that over the winter, and that takes time, right? A new motor pattern takes some time and effort to make repeatable. And then once we go outside, then it's like, hey, give me your stats on putting. How many greens you hitting? Are you hitting fairways? How do you like how the ball's flying? And then, of course, there's some teaching, but I try and do more of the changes and the hard work in the winter, so that then when we go outside, you can go out and enjoy it and hopefully play your best.
Yeah, so almost more of the mechanical stuff over the off season, and then the
Yeah,
feel, for lack of better terms, in season. Plus
for sure.
highlighting, if you're missing every green in regulation, well, we clearly know what highlight or what low light we need to work on during that portion. So for
Sure.
a recreational weekend warrior golfer, your 18 to 27,000 handicap, what's something that they should be working on to improve their game?
Well, it's funny. I was in Denver, and that's the head of it's headquarters for Golf Tech. You aware of those guys?
Yep.
So Nick Clearwater, he's the lead instructor that does all their programs. So I got in there to talk about my training aid once, and I just said, "Hey man, what do you got here?" And they're big data people, right? He's like, "Hey, we have 8 million lessons on file," and he said 91% of golfers that are learning, that aren't like really good golfers, are slicers.
Yeah.
So he's like 91% of the people walking down the road that say they play golf on occasion, right? They don't work at their game, but there's a 90% chance they slice. And so I would say, I tend to think if you say, "Hey, help a guy who's a high handicapper," he's typically a slicer. What I do is I teach people that there's an invisible line from your shoulder to the ball. And if anybody's ever seen that famous picture of Ben Hogan, where there's a pane of glass from his shoulders to the ball, and he's swinging the club under that is what I do. And that's the higher your handicap, the more you swing over that glass.
Yeah.
So with YouTube, And with all the stuff that's out there, people can go and look up how to shallow a golf swing, how to not swing over the top. And that is, so if you say, hey, guy's a 25 handicapper, I'm like, yeah, he's a slicer. He comes over the top. So we fix his face, we shallow his overall swing plane, and we get him to not hit that huge bender. So
So
that's what I do.
in that 90% of those individuals who slice, how much of it do you think is their swing path versus like grip, or dropping your right foot back
Hmm.
if you're a right-hander and cocking your left wrist and all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, this is funny. So this is where, if you look at it as an engineer, right, versus an artist, okay, because there's two ways to look at stuff, is what I find. The path is responsible for the curve. So you would say, oh, it's a path problem. Well, and this is where, as a golf pro, I believe that when somebody has an open face, poor grip, they think you want to scoop lift the ball, and they're going to go in there with an open face.
Yeah.
They're reacting. Their path is a reaction to the face. So what I actually do believe in, some pros would probably push back, some wouldn't, but your path is a reaction to your face. And so I don't think it's hard to fix a face. You can change a grip. You can teach people how
Yeah.
to flex their lead wrist. But from there, then to shallow and make them swing under that invisible pane of glass, that's a chore. It really is. So I don't think fixing the face is hard. Fixing the path is, but the path is a reaction to the face.
I definitely agree with that from my limited experience and my personal experience.
Sure.
Something that's interesting is getting back to like how you work with people and making their swing. Like if we look at Matthew Wolf, Jim Furyk, like their
Sure.
swings are weird. Bryson DeChambeau swinging the
Hmm.
same size club, like it's all weird, right? But
Yep.
understanding that path is a reaction kind of goes back to also you not thinking about your swing when you're competing. Like
Hmm.
it could feel like you're getting so shallow, so shallow, so shallow, but all of a sudden you look
Hmm.
at yourself on video and you're like, I'm basically straight up at 180 degrees, like straight vertical. And the difference between, vertical shoulders versus a shallow club is a whole different concept we can get into too. There's just so much about it depends, and like working with the person in front of you on their issues, because there's no one answer that you can give to any golfer, to all golfers I should say, that's going to be the solution, right? That's the fun about the game, in my opinion.
Sure.
The frustrating fun
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Again, I make the analogy that everyone is a Rubik's cube. Everyone that
yeah,
comes to me is a scrambled Rubik's cube, and that's what's so fun about my job. Is after doing it for 21 years, and I never solved the Rubik's cube once. I
yeah,
remember being frustrated by it, but I grab this player or this Rubik's cube and go, and I'm done. And probably while they're doing their warm up swings, I already know what we're gonna fix, because if their face
yeah,
is wide open, that's a problem. And then so then from there, going into what you do, there's some people that can't put the club in the right spots because their body won't allow them to.
yeah,
And that's where, maybe when I was younger, I was kind of a know-it-all, that, oh, well, I could get anybody to do this. Well, some people can't do some of these things. They have
yeah,
limitations. And now it's my job to see that and say, hey, you know what? If you got some low back issues, super tight hammies and stuff, there's probably a reason you can't stay down through the shot and you early extend. So it's cool how there's a lot of people working together now to make golf swings better.
yeah. Do you get into, like, with your athletes that you work with, do you get into any cross training or other forms of training aside from the golf and instruction side of it? Like, do you get
Uh, you
stretches and
know what?
exercises and things like that, or not so much?
Yeah, I let everybody know that they should do that, and
Yeah.
hot yoga and anything to get more range of motion, especially I'm 49, I'm getting older. So, um, yeah, yeah, and then having back problems myself. I don't know if you're out there and you got a low back that's bad. I spent 2.5 years with one that was kind of nagging, cortisone shots, all that.
Yeah.
And then when I finally learned how to, stretch my hamstrings, do my stretches in the morning, and then, like, this has been a really good year. I haven't hurt in 6 months, and it's been a
Yeah.
long time. But yeah, so I do some workout stuff myself, really light stuff. Uh, but I don't know if you're Ripstick, Luke
Yep.
Benoit.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so I bounce a lot of stuff off Luke. I'll try and be quick. So I went and got a lesson from Joseph Mayo this fall. And Joseph Mayo is a teacher at TPC Summerlin, and he got Brian Gay on the PGA Tour from 105, 106 club head speed to 117. So he went from
That's
one
a
of the
jump.
shortest hitters on tour, from 265 carry to 305. And now, if you notice, Brian Gay, like, there's money being put on him to win the Players now that he can hit it 320.
Yeah.
So I went and took a lesson from Joseph and was like, "Hey, man, I wanna hit it farther." And so we had a couple physical things that I had to do, but the probably the biggest one is he's like, "Bro, you got to stop guiding the ball and get uncomfortable and rip it, man. Like, you
Yeah.
got 10% more." So Lukey Benoit's got the rip stick, and he's got his PhD in kinesiology. So, man, like, talk
He's
about
a nerd.
smart, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, he is the smartest guy. And so I use the rip stick for like overspeed, underspeed training, and I do that. I have a lot of my kids swinging those and speed sticks, and even those snow sticks that we
Mhm.
all have in our bag for alignment. Swinging that 25 times a night, left-handed, right-handed, as hard as you can go. But it's really kind of gone away from the heavy lifting, and bulking up, where maybe DeChambeau is taking a little too far,
Yeah.
to just staying healthy, flexible, fast twitch, and moving faster. But from going to Mayo and talking to Luke, I'm up from 98 miles an hour. I can go 106 now, and I'm 49. And if I can hit it, 30, 40 yards farther, that means I could probably shave off 1.5 to 2 shots average score, because I'm going to be able to hit par fives. And
Yeah.
so I'm still doing the work uh, myself, and then telling all the kids what I'm learning from Luke. So
Yeah, and advocating that to the younger population, because that's
yeah,
something we see in the
yeah,
sport as a whole right now. Is it's getting so athletic, and whether you're talking Bryson DeChambeau, or even like you've got what does he call it, the stable, who is that? I can't remember the guy's name, but he works with Spieth and Justin Thomas
is
and
that
all those guys.
is that Como?
No, Colby Wayne is who it is.
Colby
Yeah, I
Wayne?
mean,
Okay,
we see all this functional training, this cross training, and rotation power, and all this stuff. I mean, you were saying
sure.
you were wringing wet, maybe 120 pounds or whatever you said in your youth, right? And you're, what'd you say, 5 foot
Yeah,
6?
yeah, at
Yeah, and like
most.
at the most on a good day, right, with spikes on. You look at like JT. I mean, he's not that heavy either. Like Victor Hovland, and they're still throwing it out there 300 some yards, and being able to utilize the efficiency of the golf swing with athleticism, I think, is where I believe the sport is leaning towards. The age of John Daly, raw talent, but drinks 1,000 Cokes and smokes 1,000 cigarettes on the thing, or you've got Pat Perez or Lumpy, to bring up the local celebrity here.
Sure.
Like, that kind of athlete is slowly fading away, and they might have a good 4 rounds on a weekend, but that kind of athlete slowly fading away.
Yeah, it's the non-athlete, and or even, and I'm 5'5", and now I'm up to a buck 40, so I'm a lot
Ayo.
bigger and now I'm older. Yeah, look out. But but the Corey Pavins of the world are not. I mean, you're kind of limited. It's not, you don't want, I don't want to admit that, right? But
Yeah.
man, you got to bomb it these days to play at the highest level. And so I'm kind of bummed about that, because there's no Corey Pavins on PGA Tour anymore hitting
Yeah.
it, 250, 260. They can't make it.
Yeah, and I think the course designs and the way, we've seen USGA and other associations kind of thinking about technology and length regulations on the courses and yardages and things like that. It's kind of a bummer for those kind of individuals, because hitting it far, hitting bombs, as Phil Mickelson would say, is part of the game now. And you can't, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's the old adage of like, oh, drive for show, putt for dough. Well, that doesn't really have its place anymore. Like, you need to drive for dough now too, and that gets difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do it all for dough, and they're good at
Yep.
all of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So with that technology aspect, where do you see the sport going in 5 to 10 years? I mean, do we see technology playing into the weekend warriors as well as the tour pros? Is that
Yeah.
going to change
I
how
mean,
your athletes work?
yeah, my opinion is that I think they're gonna still keep letting the ball go far. They're gonna keep clubs, trampoline effect, kicking the ball out there the max. And it's funny, the people that build golf clubs are, they're all MIT grads. They don't
Yeah.
play golf. They're brilliant and they learn how to like take physics and cheat physics, or take the definitions of what you're allowed to do, tweak it, and make the ball do things that it probably shouldn't do. Personally, I wanted DeChambeau last week to drive that par five
Yeah.
all 4 days, and then the PGA Tour go, "Whoa, I think we better have a ball for the PGA Tour players." And I argue all the time on some of the forums with guys. I just think there should be a tour player ball that just can't go over, say, 320. And
Yeah.
whether that's more dimples or a bigger ball, and then let everybody else that needs to hit it farther do their thing, because I think it's cool that, I hit it farther now than I ever did 15 years ago and 20 years ago. So that's cool. But the guys on TV, it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're not going to see interlock and hold a major, because they would just shred the place.
Yeah, they can't expand it
I
far enough, and nobody wants to see a 37 under weekend. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah, they're just making some of these great courses obsolete.
right.
Um, and again, for the regular everyday player, I think they should be able to hit as far as they can. If they hit 400, great, because most of them, it's probably not down the middle. But at the
Right.
highest level, I think they should just make the ball, limit it, and they could do that with aerodynamics. They can make it do whatever they want. But we'll see. I've been told I'm totally crazy. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that agree with you there, and me being a short hitter, I'm one of them, right? It's funny.
yeah,
I've got a driver that I've been using for a long time up until last year, and I was working with a guy locally here, Luke Elfner, if you know him, but
yeah,
I was using this old Titleist driver for the longest time, and I liked it, right? And he's like, "Yeah, you hit it decently, but you realize you're leaving like 30 yards on the table because this driver is 10, 15 years old." He goes, "If you were using a 10,
yeah.
15-year-old ball, you'd actually be hitting it further than the balls because the technology just didn't match. The ball versus driver
Sure.
technology wasn't syncing up, and like." For some reason, my naivete didn't even consider that being an option. It's like, well, yeah, no shit, that's not why it's flying further. Um, so I'm like, maybe I should go like when I'm pond skimming for balls, I should be going looking for old like Wilson staffs instead of TP5s or something, right? So it's funny.
Right?
Awesome. So let's do a little shameless plug here. Tell you you've kind of mentioned this device, the Chili Whacker. It's an alignment, a swing path alignment tool.
Yep.
Tell us, the genesis of that. When did it start? Where did it come from in your brain? I don't want to get too far in your
Yeah.
brain. I don't want to go to the deep cavernous sides of your brain. So be
No, you
generous with us
don't.
here. But tell us more about that.
Well, again, going back to working for Haney, and being a swing plane based teacher, that's how I learned to get people to control the ball. And again, there are other ways to do it, right? Haney is just one method of, I don't know, a good 8 different ones that I'm aware of. So I knew that swing plane is very important, and that you could, if you get the club in the right spot, you can get people to bottom out in the same place. You can get them to hit the sweet spot more, and you can get them to control their face and path. So the 4 things that ball wants you to be good at. If you get somebody on plane and not over the top and not super stuck and underplane, you can get amazing results like Eddie Bo did that day on that range. So uh, from there, I used to teach with sticks. We put those sticks in the ground at the angle of the club. If anybody's listening and they're like, well, why do people put those sticks on the range behind them? Well, they're just getting the shaft of the club to match that tilt.
Yeah.
Or if you talk about DeChambeau, has all his clubs bent to match that one tilt. So if you get on that angle, that's good. So now here I am teaching for years. Back at the Wilds, I used to have a video camera high speed. I'd take a video of you. Then you'd hit 2, 3 balls. We'd drive up to the clubhouse. I'd load it in. I'd pull it up. I'd put, Ernie Els next to you and say, here's what's going on. And people would sometimes go, those lines that you draw, like, where are those in space?
Yeah.
And now this is where, I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb, right? And I think that's good for my students because I want to make things easier. So it was about 2015-ish. I started putting a piece of foam in the way from the shoulder to the ball, and I'm like, just swing under this, and people would get unbelievably different ball flights, a slicer to a draw in 3/4 swings. And we started to be able to show this on TrackMan that it was changing the path. And then hanging out with Luke was doing studies on external versus internal cues. And that just
Yeah.
means an internal cue is keep your left arm straight, keep your knee here. That's internally. External is me putting something in the way of the golf ball and saying, hit the ball, but don't hit that. And it is now being proven, and don't quote me, there's a stickler out there, but that
No,
you
it
can
is.
learn
And so
upwards
interestingly
of,
enough,
yeah,
it is being proven. So there's a research in my world going on by guys like Gabriel Wolf, Brett Bartholomew, that external cues have been shown to be 30 times more uh, efficacious in a pattern change, a movement pattern change. So 30 times
sure.
better than any verbal internal cue. So
Yeah. So what I was going to say is 80% faster, but I don't know if the 30 times to 80, but it's a lot,
it's
right?
better, right? Like it
Yeah,
could be
it's
3% better. It's just better, right? Like
right. Yep.
that's
So
awesome.
my thing where, I tell everybody, like, if most people that come to me, they don't want to read 70 golf books, they don't want to watch, 80 hours of golf instruction videos, even though some have, they just want the cliff notes. They're like, just
Yeah.
please tell me how to get better. And I'm like, cool, I got a product here. Check it out. The shoulder plane is from your shoulder to the ball, right? That if that were a pane of glass, you swing under that. And then I don't want you to get too flat. So there's a line from your belt buckle to the ball, or the original shaft plane. So it makes this little V on a screen. If you ever take a video, that there's a V, and these two bumpers on an adjustable. It's a tripod with an adjustable couple foam bumpers, which
Yeah.
are like the things you throw in a pool for a kid
Yeah,
pool
like little
noodle.
pool noodles, yeah.
Yeah, it's two adjustable pool noodles that you can make wider or tighter depending on how good you are, to teach you to put that club between these two gates. So it's actually, like, people ask, they're like, well, what's the deal? And I'm like, well, this took me 20 years to simplify it to this, man. Just
Yeah.
swing between the foam noodles. Like,
Yeah.
as long as you got a good grip and you got the face under control, and then you use a TrackMan to show them the path and the numbers. And all of a sudden, when a guy's 7 irons going from 118 to 153, a lot
With a
of
baby
guys are like,
draw.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're like,
Yeah.
how are you doing this? I've taken lessons. I've never been able to draw it. I'm like, well, it's just physics.
Yeah, and I
So
mean,
that's how I do it.
it's physics and that external cue. I think it's a genius idea, and it's items like
Well,
that like people like me look at it. I'm like, well, that's simple. Like he probably thought of that
super
overnight.
simple.
But like you just said,
Mhm.
20 years of trying to perfect something that looks so simple is, in hindsight, yeah, really easy to think about and conceptualize, but it takes
Mhm.
time to get there. I have to ask, did you ever like sit there with two pool noodles between people and try not to get hit by their golf club in the meantime?
All the time. And and I did get hit. But yeah, it's funny. I would put one up there, almost one for their shoulder plane. Then when they get it
Yeah,
under it, and then all of a sudden they drop kick it. I'm like, well, that's too shallow. Swing over this, and they're like, well, wait, you just had me swing under. I'm like, well, that
under,
one
yeah.
was higher. So then I would show them, and then when they get between there, they're like, well, this is great. And the true reason I went through the patenting process was I had a gentleman that I met that was shooting in the hundreds, and he's like, my goal is to someday break 100 at Pebble Beach. And I was like, cool, Bill, we can do that.
Yeah.
Swing under this foam. And I just showed him how to do it. And he ended up taking a foam noodle and a way to put it that I told him. And he went down to Palm Springs and came back that spring and shot 85 and was like, I think I could break 90 at Pebble. And it turns out after that, he shot 84. I think he shot 84 and he birdied 18. And we got done. Like, he took about 6 lessons over 2 years. And he goes, you know what? If you don't patent this, I'm gonna. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, you
Like,
can't patent a foam noodle. Like, and
yeah.
he goes, oh, yeah, you can. So I went through provisional patent and all that, and then came up with this product called Chili Whacker, which is it's a joke on my name, right? Because
Yeah.
Chiles, everybody calls me Chili, and then don't whack these bumpers because they make an awful sound when you hit one. It's a little reminder that you did it wrong. But yeah, here we are, and it's been, I think this is year 4, And I mean, I got tour players with them. I got teachers that teach tour players. I got good players. I got beginners. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So it's really fun.
And I think that's the testament to a good tool, if we want to call it that, is something that beginners to pros can all gain perspective and advice and ultimately a better game from, is something like that, right? And that the putting alignment mirrors, we can get beginners and professionals
Oh
alike
yeah.
on them, and I mean those kind of things they'll stand the test of time. So well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my favorite one was I went to a when we had the website, we had a marketing and advertising guy, and he goes, well, your message. He's like, um, who does this product work for? Who's your target market? And I just remember going, anybody that's ever tubed one off the sweet spot and said, I want to do it again.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, no, we got to focus. And I was like, no, man,
No,
this is for
that's
any
it.
golfer that likes to hit it on the sweet spot.
Yeah. And but I mean, that's like, as a golfer, any golfer has had that moment, whether they
Oh
were
yeah.
3 or whether they
So
were
it keeps you coming
66
back.
when they started. And as soon as
Yeah.
they peer one, they're like,
Oh yeah.
that's what keeps coming
Yeah.
back. And if that's
I
one
want to
shot
do
in a
that.
round, yep, that's exactly what it is. Super funny. Super funny.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. So I've got 3 questions that are not even professionally related or anything we've talked about in the past. If
All
you want to
right.
keep them to golf, that's totally fine, up to you. But if it can
Okay.
be anything in life, these are questions that I ask every single guest on the podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you
Cool.
could be ranked top 10 in the world at something, what would it be and why?
Oh wow, it would be top 10 in the world at playing golf, because that's what I set off to and was my goal, was to truly be like the number one player in the world, flying
Yeah.
around on a jet, playing golf, making millions of dollars and not working, because I
Walking
don't
around
consider
beautiful courses left and right. Yeah.
yeah, I don't consider playing golf work. Even to the day, I mean, I most days have a really fun time when I'm playing. I have more fun teaching, to be honest. But yeah, I think being, number one, top 10 in the world at golf, oof, that would have been the overall goal.
So I kind of anticipated that answer from you, and this is actually the
Yeah,
reason I like asking this question is that's my response to this answer.
sure.
When I first heard this question, it was actually, if you could be 100th in the world at anything, what would it be and why? And I said golf even to that, because imagine if you're 100th in the world rankings in golf, you're still making millions, you're still walking around beautiful courses, you're still flying around in PGAs, like it's a pretty darn
Yeah,
good life,
you're
right? Like,
probably even a little like less famous and can do whatever
right.
you want,
You can go to the grocery store and play your muni
Yeah,
courses when you want to. Yeah, exactly. Still go up to
yeah,
Timber Creek and crank out a
right.
65 if you wanted to. Yeah, that's super funny. What's one thing you know you can do better at and aspire to learn within the next year?
Ooh, wow, there's so much. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for my job is communication. That's what I really want to get good and better at, every day. But heck, playing guitar, doing
Yeah.
art, mowing my lawn, getting those lines just right.
Making them look
Yeah,
really nice. Yeah, that's super
yeah.
funny.
I want to be. It's not that I want to be the best at everything, but I just want to do it the best that I can do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, doesn't matter what it is. So I pretty much, whatever I get into it.
So there's going to be a Jacobson lawnmower in your future here pretty soon now with the nice
I got a
wheels and
I
everything.
got a refurb John Deere last year,
Do you?
man.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you are diehard about your lawn. That's super funny. We actually
I'm
bought
that
a
guy. No, I was gonna say I'm that guy, the lawn guy.
Yeah, that's I grew up. I mean, my first introduction to golf was I was a maintenance person up at a course, and I worked that through high school or even before I was. I think the statute of limitations is gone. I was an illegal worker because I started working at like 13 when you weren't supposed to.
Right.
But I needed money, right? And
Sure.
yeah, I got hooked to. I actually got hooked on like greenskeeping first, and then golf second. So now it bothers me that we bought a rental house, or it was previously a rental house, which obviously
Uh-huh.
renters don't care about their lawns. So like, I'm
Sure.
still 3 years in trying to like perfectly manicure it, and it's just such a process. Like, ergonomy is just hard, right? So yeah, it's funny. But all right, last one here. What is one actionable step that you would advocate for listeners and viewers to take better care of their relationships, their health, their movement, and their lives, or their golf game?
Wow. Can you say that one more
Yeah,
time? I'm sorry.
absolutely. What's one actionable step? So something that they can do every single day or once a week or once a month, something like a daily tip or trick, essentially, that you would advocate for people to take better care of their relationships, their health, their movement, or their lives?
Ooh, that's pretty good. I think I don't know if anybody knows Brent Snyder. You know Brent?
Yeah.
Brent Snyder's he's a teacher at Troy Byrne, and he is really big on gratitude. And prior to chatting with him, I have not been the best at gratitude. I've actually perhaps even been the opposite.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that if when I wake up, I kind of go, you know what are you thankful for? What are you lucky to have? What are you, rather than things you're missing, what are you, what are you just happy about?
Yeah.
And, what are you, yeah. So I think practicing that would make a lot of people a lot happier. I think social media and everybody being stuck online rather than being out and about, especially this past year, has been really weird.
Yeah.
If everybody could just kind of chill and take a little stock in all the good things that they have, and then write down a few things that maybe you want to get. But I just think, and that's for me personally, that's kind of helped me rather than wake up on the wrong side of the bed and just be like,
Right. Yeah.
so that's,
Yeah.
yeah, but and that's he's really big in that, and he's one of the best golfers in our state that I know, and that's why. It's because his mind, he is not hard on himself. He just has a blast, and there's a lot to learn from that.
Yeah, I think it's Max Homa has said, like, like, common question, like, what do you draw on your ball for ball marking? It's like a smiley face. Then, like, at least somebody's smiling at me, right? Like, there's always something to be
Right.
appreciative for and something to be happy about. And if you can focus on that, and it's not going to happen every minute of every day, but
Sure.
at least for a minute a day, like instead of 0 minutes a day, that's a start, right? And I think that's a huge step.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking your hour with me here today. Kind of as a little summary, go have fun on the course. Train your swing path. There's only 4 things you can control, and the ball doesn't care how you move, right? Go buy a chili whacker. I'm guessing chiliwhacker.com or something fun
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, there you go. Give Eric a follow on Instagram. Eric Chiles PGA is his handle. And aside from that, go train your butt off and hit the best round of your life this summer, right? That's how it works. It's that
Awesome.
easy. It's that easy.
Absolutely. Takes a little work. You got to do the work.
Nah, it's all talent, right? John Daly
Yeah,
talent.
right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it, man.
Appreciate it.
Of
All
course. Have a
right.
good rest of your day.
All right. You too. Take care.